On October 14th, 2007, in the early morning hours, we got a call, and the call came in of a man yelling, throwing luggage, breaking windows, and myself and 3 other officers headed up to the international terminal. There was a man there, and there were some bystanders on the public side. Within a matter of 26 seconds, we attempted to communicate with him, told him to get his passport. He instead picked up a stapler, opened a fist towards us. I tasered him. We were in a fight to get him under arrest. Tragically, at the end of his arrest, minutes after, he died in Vancouver Airport of heart failure. So a couple years later, I testified at a national inquiry as to what I did. And even though we were cleared by 3 separate police forces of any wrongdoing that night, a special prosecutor was hired, and based on the testimony we gave at the inquiry a couple of years after the incident, I went to trial for perjury. I was convicted, and I ended up serving jail time for a crime I didn't commit.
I was surfing Instagram one day, and I saw this clip of you talking to a group, and then you were talking about how you had to spend time in jail and were a former police officer for something that happened. And I'm not going to give any of that away right now because we're going to get into it. And that captivated me. I'm like, what is this? Like, you don't hear stuff like this, okay? And then again, it kept on going into my feeds, and I started going a little bit deeper into your story. And because our organization and this entire channel has a lot of inspiration for people trying to get into policing, you have a different kind of message or a different kind of experience that I feel not only can people who are trying to get into the service pull from, but people that are in the system right now, right, that can share this. So what I want to do, Kwesi, is I think in anything, I love superheroes in the sense of, like, you look at their origin stories, right?
Who's your favorite?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Who's my favorite?
Yeah.
Oh, man. So for me, like, it's not a character that many people know about, but it was from the X-Men, a character called Gambit.
Oh, I love Gambit.
Yeah. And then, of course, then Superman, right? Because, at the end of the day, he was the poster boy. But what I wanted to do, Kwesi, is start from the beginning. And we're going to get into the climax of your life, right? But start from the beginning, man. Like, where did you grow up?
Okay. So beginning, yeah. I was born in Montreal, and I was raised in Rexdale, which is basically North Toronto. And
rough area.
Rough area. Saw some things and heard some things growing up that you don't necessarily always hear when you're young. Eventually, we moved. I was raised by my mom by herself, and we moved pretty much all around Toronto, whether it's Rexdale, Etobicoke, Mississauga. We've moved around quite a bit. But then I went to Ryerson University, and I kind of didn't know what I wanted to do. And I was literally out one day. I was working at a government job, and we were on strike. I was walking on the street, picketing, and I remember saw a police officer, and it was a Toronto police officer, and he drove by, and then he got out of his car, and he was helping some people. And I'm like, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to work in an office. I want to go and help people and have every day be different. And that's kind of like the fast forward version of how I became a police officer. And the reason I get that out of the way is because a lot of times people ask me, did you always want to be a police officer? Some people have that young dream that
That's right.
ever since they were a kid, they wanted to do that. That wasn't me. I just saw it one day. I said, that's what I want to do.
And how old were you when that happened?
I was about, it was early 20s. So I would say probably about 22, 23 maybe.
Okay. And prior to that, you never really had that in your foreground, like in your foresight, to be like, that's something I want to do.
No, I just didn't know what I wanted to do.
Okay.
I tried different things in school. I changed majors a couple of times in university, and I had no real direction. And so I just said, okay, let me get a job. And while I was working that job, I found something that told me, okay, I want to do that.
Okay. So you find out this is something that you want to do. What's your next step? What do you start doing right now to prepare for that?
So I started to try to find people that were already doing it, right?
Okay.
So anything you want to do in life, find someone doing it already, and that's how you learn more about it. And I happened to be in the same office as another lady who was trying out for policing, and then I got introduced to someone else who was already a police officer, and they just said, apply and see if you get in, but just be in shape. So I started going to the gym. That was the biggest thing. I just started going to the gym, but I've always been into lifting weights and not the cardio part. And there's a cardio portion of the physical testing that you have to be good at too. So I started just looking online and preparing physically for becoming an officer. And someone had told me about volunteer experience, so I started doing some more volunteer work. Those were pretty much the two things. I did more time in the gym and more volunteer work.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So now you ended up basically getting on with the RCMP. Was that your service of choice? Because when you said you saw that officer, I'm assuming it was a Toronto police officer.
Yes, I was in Toronto, and that was the first force that I thought, let me apply to Toronto. And I applied to Toronto, and a funny thing happened. They asked a question when you apply. They asked if you've ever smoked marijuana.
Yes.
And I'm like, yeah, I have.
Yeah.
And then they told me how long ago was it, and I think it was like a few months before.
Right.
And they said, it's got to be 2 years. At the time, they said it has to be 2 years between your last joint and getting on the force. So you got to reapply again later. So Toronto was my first choice. Didn't get in there. And so while I was waiting, I was kind of working odd jobs, and I thought, let me apply to various other forces. And so I applied to Ottawa, Halton.
Yeah.
And a family friend of ours was an RCMP officer. And he said, well, why don't you apply to become an RCMP officer? And I'm like, I don't know. And I didn't think of any reason not to, besides the fact that I would have to be willing to try to live somewhere else.
Right.
Right. So if you apply to City Forest, you get to stay in Toronto, but RCMP can place you anywhere across the country. I was young, I was single, didn't care. And so I thought, let me apply to the RCMP. And I kind of got on the process of applying with Toronto and RCMP at the same time. And RCMP came through a little bit quicker because I reapplied to Toronto. But RCMP actually came through, and I was accepted to go to depot in Regina, Saskatchewan.
Okay. And did you even know, because we've had the RCMP on the show before as well, and a lot of people say hey man, it'd be great to be on the RCMP, and they're like, wait a second, I got to move out of my province to work here now, right?
Yeah.
So being a Toronto boy now, right, and then you find out that you're going to get on and you're going to go to the depot, do you have any idea where they're going to station you?
No, you don't. At first, you're just told that you're going to have, you can give them options.
Yes.
And then you may or may not get your province of choice. And then you have a choice of city, then you may or may not get your city of choice. So I knew going in that it was highly unlikely that I'd be returning to Toronto, Ontario. But I was okay with trying new places because I wanted to see more of Canada anyways.
Okay. And when you got on, when you found out that you got on, you called it, you basically spoke it into existence, that's what I want to do. What kind of feelings did you have? Like, were you feeling like I just achieved an ultimate goal? Because for those listening that are not police officers, it's friggin' hard to get into the service.
It is. Right? You need patience and persistence because you can get rejected for the smallest thing. You can get delayed in your application. It was 2 years between the time when I wrote the first test and when I got accepted to go to depot.
Yeah, it's almost like winning a lottery. I look at it.
It is, and it's a long wait. And I always say, if anyone ever asks me about becoming a police officer, I say go about your life as if you didn't apply.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because if you wait, you can just build up that anxiety in you. Just apply. Know it's going to take the time it takes, and go about your life. And so I tried to do that as much as possible.
Okay.
And when I got in, they said, "Oh, you're in." I'm like. And it did feel like a dream come true at the time because I thought, oh my gosh, I figured, they haven't called me in this long. I'm not going to get on. Then they called me, and it was just fast.
Yeah.
Once they call you, it's like you're leaving for depot in a couple of months. Get ready. And then I was on a plane, Regina, Saskatchewan.
Kwesi, let me ask you a question, buddy.
Yeah, sure.
When you got on, and you know what you're about to walk into, the world you're about to walk into. Did you go through any sort of process saying like what kind of officer you want to be? Meaning as in what kind of impact do you want to make? Like were any of those crossing your minds at that age?
At the time, I'm in my mid-20s, and I hadn't thought about what kind of officer I want to be long-term.
Yeah.
I just knew that I wanted to wake up every day and feel like I'm doing something that matters.
Okay. Purpose-driven work.
Yeah, I want to do something that matters. And I felt like I wasn't in the government job I was doing at the time. And I just wanted to do something that I felt like, okay, I'm helping someone. I'm changing someone's life in some way. And yeah, we have to deal with the lowest level of society sometimes, but just being able to say I'm making a difference every day, and every day is different. I wanted to make sure that I was always mentally and physically stimulated by the work I was doing.
Okay, so you do your depot, you pass everything. Where do they deploy you?
Yeah, so I did pass, but what was funny is that a lot of they put you in a troop when you land in Regina, and your troop are the people that you travel the 6 months with through depot. And there's about anywhere from 20 to 30 people in a troop, and they come from all over Canada. And it was interesting because I met a lot of guys who had shot guns before, who had done hunting and that type of thing. I had never shot a gun before. I'd never driven a car bigger than a Honda Civic type car before, so getting in a Crown Victoria. So there was a lot of things that I had to get used to. But eventually, yes, I did pass. And they asked me what provinces did I want to go to, right? So I said I wanted to go back to Ontario. They gave me 3 choices. I said Ontario, and then I thought, logically, if I'm going to make the same salary across the country, let me pick a province where housing costs a little bit less.
Yes, very smart.
Picked Nova Scotia as my second choice, and then I thought Alberta might be a good choice because Alberta had good housing prices. So I picked Ontario, Nova Scotia, and Alberta, and they gave me British Columbia.
Okay, so none of your choice.
Yeah, so after that, I didn't care.
What year is this now?
This was 2005. Yeah.
2005.
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
So you go to BC. Is it your first time in BC?
Yeah, it was my first time. I landed in Richmond, British Columbia, and
landscape's automatically different from Toronto, obviously.
Yeah, but it was beautiful. Like, it's just outside Vancouver. Everything's outdoors. There's no real winter there. And,
right.
As far as a place to be stationed, I know a lot of guys that got stationed in northern places, really abandoned posts. So I actually did well for myself with the posting I got, being posted in a major city.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting is that you wanted to lead by real estate choice, and you ended up going to probably the second most expensive province in the country.
Exactly. And I think it was number 1 for a while, right? So it's just the way it worked out, and it was okay though. Okay.
So you're in there right now in 2005.
Yeah.
And you're a 4th class constable. Is that they work with the RCMP?
I think that's what they call it. It's been a while, but I think it was I think that's what they called it, 4th class, and then you work your way up salary wise, and then over 3 years you become a 1st class, right? So, yeah.
And what are, like, obviously in the constable parameters, you're basically doing everything. You're giving tickets, you're responding to calls, the whole 9 yards.
General duty. You have a field officer trainer for 4 months. 6 months officially, but you're on your own in your own car after 4 months. And that was a big learning curve for me because I didn't know how to do anything, and I was just learning everything as I went along. But yeah, you do everything: traffic stops, home invasions, site security, boring detail. Like, there's a lot of different things you do. It's just general duty policing.
Are you liking the job?
I love it. I mean, at first it was hard because I didn't know if I was cut out to be an officer, just because there was just so much going on, and I didn't feel that I was very good at it. And I didn't have the most confidence, and I didn't have the best coach. And when you put those two together, it leads to a lot of self-doubt. And I had a lot of that in the beginning. But after about 4 months, I finally got my feet under me, and I figured out kind of my own style of policing. Everybody has their own style. And I got to a point where it was probably, I loved going to work. Every day was different. Yes, you lose out on sleep on night shifts, but I love the work.
Okay. So you're basically getting into a routine of doing the job.
Yeah.
You're doing it for a couple of years. Okay. Yeah. We're gonna start fast forwarding right now to basically the year where basically everything changed.
Yeah.
So 2005, you joined the service. What year now is the year that basically the situation happened?
Yeah, so I go to Depot in 2004, spend 6 months, 2005 graduate, and in 2007, I was working at Vancouver Airport. Now, in Richmond, because it's right next to Vancouver, they are in charge of the airport. So just like the Toronto Airport,
Peel Regional Police there
is technically in Mississauga.
Yes.
The Vancouver International Airport is technically in Richmond, British Columbia.
Interesting. Okay.
And so Richmond RCMP takes care of the airport. And so every officer that starts at Richmond has to do a year rotation at the airport. So basically, you're working in the city for a while, then you go work at the airport for a year, then you come back and you do whatever else you want with your career. And I say have to because a lot of officers hate the airport rotation because it's slow, right?
Right.
So, there's 4 to 6 officers max on at a time, and there's not much going on there. You're doing, maybe luggage searches, a lot of self-directed work. So a lot of officers find it kind of boring. And so that's where I was stationed, and we didn't get a lot of calls. And most of the calls we got were pretty routine, except for the night of October 14th, 2007. We get a call. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning, and the call comes in that a guy is destroying airport property, breaking windows, and yelling. So a bunch of 911 calls come in. There's only 4 of us on at the time, and we're all
4 in the entire airport.
4 in the entire airport.
Okay.
Yeah, because there's not much that goes on there,
Right.
And none of us have any calls.
Yeah.
So we all head up to the airport, and you see what you normally see when you walk into any airport, right? You see people waiting for their family to arrive.
Yes.
And then you see the secure side of the airport, and there's a big divider in between. In this case, there was a big glass wall. And I remember I see the guy that what everyone called about. He was standing in the doorway between the public and the secure side. And so I start walking towards him. And as I'm walking towards him, I hear someone say he doesn't speak English. So I approach him, and when you meet someone that doesn't speak your language, how do you try to communicate with them?
Body language,
hand signals,
Yes.
miming, whatever. Right. And so I start doing what I think is universal hand signals, like open,
Yes.
I say passport, open
Yes.
a book,
Yes.
mime with a pen,
Right.
all things I think he would understand. And he looked agitated. I saw some things broken around, and I figured, okay, get your paperwork. Let's figure this out and be done with it. Now, instead of getting out his passport, he goes to a table behind him, and he reaches for what I call weapon of opportunity, right? So in his case, it was just a stapler.
Yes.
He picks up a stapler, he opens it up, fist in one hand, fist in the other, and he starts an advance towards us. And to me, immediately training kicks in. I see a combative stance in front of me. I step back, and I pull out my taser.
Okay, can I pause for 1 second?
Yeah, 100%.
What does training tell you to do in situations like this?
Yeah, well, in training, you identify
Like the threat?
A threat, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
basically, there's different levels of behavior, and you respond based on the level of behavior
Like
you
the
see.
use of force wheel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they called it IMIM,
Okay.
Incident Management Intervention Model.
Yeah.
And so basically, the cooperative all the way to death or grievous bodily harm,
Right.
right? So on that continuum, you have responses that are appropriate to use, that you're allowed to use, because you have to be able to justify the use of force that you use based on what you saw, right? So if someone's cooperative and you shoot them, you can never justify that because the behavior that you saw doesn't match the intervention that you used. In this case, on the wheel, it's ingrained in you because we do so much training on it. I immediately saw a combative stance. And in the combative stance, there's a sequence of things that you can do, right? So you can try to use verbal communication. You can use the baton. You can use the taser. These are the tools that you're allowed to use as an officer when you are confronted with that type of behavior.
And communication is kind of out the window here because he can't understand it.
Well, you know what? Even if he could understand it at the time, he was in a combative stance.
Right.
You always using verbal communication
Yes.
because it's always in the round, right? So
Right.
So you're saying, drop the stapler or drop the weapon or whatever you're saying. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but part of that is you combine interventions. So for
Yes.
me, I pulled up my taser and I tased him.
Okay.
And we get him on the ground, and we're in a fight to get him under arrest. And sometimes the taser works completely, sometimes it doesn't. In this case, one of the connectors didn't work, apparently. I find out later. However, there's 4 of us trying to get him under arrest. So eventually, after a few minutes, we get the handcuffs on him, we get him under arrest, and I figure, that's the end of the call, right? We'll figure this out, and we'll go from there. Now, a few minutes later, I'm a few feet away, and I hear my fellow officer on the radio. He says, we need EHS here. We need ambulance here because he's turning blue. So ambulance arrive, fire arrive, and, it was a long time ago, but I do remember seeing they open him up, and I see they start to do CPR on him. And then a few minutes later, I hear the 3 words no police officer ever wants to hear. Time of death. So his name is Robert Jakanski, and he unfortunately died of heart failure after we arrested him. What I didn't know at the time is that he was exhibiting something called excited delirium, which is a condition where, the heart rate's elevated and your heart can be compromised. And he had other things going on as well, and I didn't know that going in, of course, right? You don't know what you're dealing with going in, and unfortunately, his heart failed after we arrested him. So,
how did you feel?
Yeah,
I can tell right now, Kwesi, that even that this is 15 years later, roughly, it still weighs on you.
Yeah, 18 years later, and it definitely weighs on me. At the end of the day, regardless of whether I was justified or not, which I was justified.
Yes.
3 separate police forces, province of British Columbia looked at what we did, said the actions they took were justified as police officers.
Right.
That's not up for dispute. However, I'm responsible for the death of another human being. And so every time I say this story, I have to say, you know what? At the end of the day, this is something that I'm responsible for, and it's something that I have to live with for the rest of my life. And I've had numerous people online remind me of that, whether it's through hate mail, comments, a lot of things people have said to me that I won't repeat here, that just some people just see it a certain way, right? And so, yes, it does still kind of weigh on me at the end of the day because it's actions that I took,
right?
Whether they were justified or not, whether they were justified, but...
Okay, I want to touch on that in a little bit, but just to kind of go back to the story, this happens right now. He's being pronounced dead. Okay. Well, what happens now? Like you go, like I'm assuming after you've done all the reporting and stuff, you're giving your statements now, or is this just writing in your memo books right now, kind of incident reports, what's happening at this present moment?
So, at the time, when we heard that, and it's a long time ago, but I do remember that I think our supervisors came, and then we eventually had to give statements as to what happened, right? So,
by the way, can I say, while this is all happening, is your adrenaline right up, surged right now?
Yeah, I mean, you mean at the call, or
when you're dealing with this, right?
Yeah, well, I think it had come down a little bit after we had dealt with him. I mean, I can only speak for myself. My adrenaline definitely was heightened, and I can't say exactly what I felt, but it's almost like it's not real for me.
Yeah.
Like you feel like you're in a dream, and unfortunately, a bad dream.
Right.
That's about the best I could say with that, how I felt. But then, I was asked to give statements, and there's what I did and what I should have done. What I did was I gave a statement. What I should have done was what's recommended now is to have at least one sleep cycle, have some time to decompress from that adrenaline rush that you were just on. But less than a couple hours later, I'm giving statements as to what I did. Right. So I give those statements and I go back to work. Right. So that's what we do as officers. Right. You go through a major situation and you go back to work. And I figured that's the end of it. However, I always laugh because in Richmond, there's not a lot of black people there. And so it's a high Asian population, and I'm easily recognizable. And what I didn't mention was that there was someone in the airport actually filming the whole incident.
Yes.
And eventually he sold that to the national news, so it ended up all over television, and I even think it's still on YouTube. And so people started to see what happened, and they recognized that's the black officer from the airport.
Was the footage filmed close up? Could you see very well what's going on in this person?
You could see well. I mean, it wasn't the same level of iPhones that we have now.
Yes,
I think it was actually a camcorder that he recorded it on. But you can see what happened. You can see the officers involved, and
because of this video, it basically broke news.
It broke news, and so what had happened was there was someone who reported what happened. And then the video was released. But the person that reported what happened didn't talk to us first.
When you say the person, was it another police officer?
A media
spokesperson,
okay. Right? So, but we were never contacted to get our version of the story before that was reported.
Right.
So there was there was errors in what was reported, and then the video was released, and so this narrative started to build. Oh, these guys tried to cover up what they really did. It was just a lack of communication before that media statement was released.
Right.
So you fast forward, and people see the incident, they see what happened. People say that's I'm easily recognizable on the street, and so I had to be taken off the street because I couldn't work general duty anymore.
Like, what was happening when you were working the street?
Yeah, just people would see you and say, "Oh, that's that guy," and some people would come up, "Are you the guy that was at the airport?" Or you got the guy that was at that call?" And it just is very distracting,
right,
trying to do
your job,
high stress job
yes.
when people are talking about this other incident, right? Even when I would go, I'd go out with the guys to the bars on swing shifts, right? So the swing between day and night shift, I would see people that would recognize me. So it got to the point where I didn't even want to live in the Lower Mainland anymore. And fortunately, I was presented with an option eventually to move back to Ontario. So I was transferred from BC back to Ontario. So I finally got my home province. Not the way I wanted to, but I eventually got that transfer.
And to go back, when you're saying that this video captured something that this media person didn't kind of connect, there was like a missing link in this.
Yeah.
What was that missing link?
I believe it was actually talking to the officers that were at the call, because the media person didn't watch the video. Right?
So they basically spun a narrative, basically.
Yeah. They were told because it had to be sent out quickly, right?
Yes.
So that's the thing. When something happens, there has to be a media statement released very quickly, and they don't always have time to get all the facts 100% correct. So unfortunately, sometimes there's inaccuracies in what's reported because of speed, right? They want to get something out quickly. And
would you say that the media, when they portrayed this, were trying to portray this like 4 police officers did their job and took somebody down that was getting aggressive, and the result of this was this? Or was it coming across that 4 police officers were acting in negligence, and this is the reason why it caused it? Were they trying to spin it in a negative light?
So when I believe they were trying to spin it in a negative light, but only because when there was a time delay between when the incident was reported.
Yes.
Right? So there was the narrative that was told to the public as to what happened.
Right.
And then weeks later, the video we had originally seized was returned and then given to national media, right?
Okay. So there's a whole bunch of weeks that have passed right now.
Yeah. So the version that people saw was different than the version that was reported.
Right.
So it's almost justified that the public would think that
cover up.
There was some kind of cover up.
Yes.
It was just a lack of communication that the first incident, the way the incident was reported was incorrect based on what actually happened. But they never talked to the officers involved. So that's kind of why that happened.
And what's going through your mind? Are you thinking, before this video gets released, you're thinking, I went through a traumatic experience. This is kind of what happened. I'm going on day to day, as you say now, it's behind me now, moving on my job. You're almost kind of like compartmentalizing and putting it away now that this is kind of behind me now, moving forward to whatever else is coming through now.
Yeah.
So you're not expecting now, this is just kind of going to the media right now and just pop.
Oh, no. When I went back to work, it was just like back to work. And I think that's why they call it post-traumatic stress disorder, because sometimes the post is a long time.
Yes.
I didn't process it. I just was told, hey, if I was in your situation, that's what I would have done.
Right.
A lot of officers were like, okay, you know what? This stuff happens. Go back to work. And so I went back to work, and I didn't process anything, and I didn't think anything of it.
Right.
Because the media hadn't gotten the video yet. I was just moving on with my life. To be honest, I was moving on with my life in policing until the video came out. And then things started to change, and then I started to learn, oh, that's what happened. They reported it this way, and this is the video. Okay, I'm not sure if I can work here anymore. And that's when things started to change. But at the same time, I was still thinking, okay, well, this is my opportunity then to be able to go back to my home province.
Yeah. And Kwesi, are your superiors, like when you're looking to get this transfer out, are your superiors saying, man, look, we get it. We want to make sure that you're not having to deal with this. Like, are they supportive of you?
That was one thing. I definitely got support. And as soon as the video came out and people started recognizing me on the street, I started to hear, hey, he's probably going to get his transfer. This is your chance to transfer back to where you want to go.
Right.
Transfer out of this province. because it's probably not going to work for you here anymore.
Yeah.
Right. So
Okay, so you're back home in Ontario,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And you're just thinking life is normal now in a different province.
Yeah.
What happens next?
So I was transferred to commercial crime, and so plainclothes in Ontario, back to work. I even did a couple of partnerships with the Toronto Police, and yeah, I'm back to work. And then I get a call to come back to BC because there's something called a national inquiry. So it's basically a court case where they interview everybody, like from security at the airport to lawyers to the police officers involved.
Is it like the SIU?
I don't know exactly what the SIU does. I'm not sure if it's the same thing, but it's really just a national inquiry. So it's basically a court case where it was nationally publicized and televised, and we were called in to answer questions as to what we did.
Okay.
So we weren't on trial for anything. It was just, ostensibly we're not on trial for anything, but we were just asked questions about what we did at the airport.
And this is yourself and the three other officers?
Yeah, myself and the three other officers. So this is a couple of years later. So it's like 2009.
Yeah.
And so I go back to BC, and I spend 3 days on the stand answering questions from various people about what I did. And so I figured, okay, I'll tell what I did to the best of my knowledge, head back home, back to work, and put it behind me. So I did that. I was asked questions about the statements that I made the night of the incident. Now, the questions that were asked, I didn't get all the facts right. There was 2 years between when I actually went to the inquiry, when I went to the case. There was inaccuracies in my statements, not deliberate. It was because I just came off a traumatic incident and I said what I remember to the best of my knowledge. And I was asked questions about those. And so I testified in BC, I fly back to Ontario, I figured this is good. And I'm working, and then a couple of years later after that, 2011 comes, and I get a letter saying you've been charged with perjury. So I was charged not with anything I did at the airport, but with deliberately lying about some of the facts, some of the answers that I gave during the inquiry. Now, there was a 2-year gap between the inquiry and when I gave the statements. The statements were given the night of a traumatic incident. Every single officer, I would argue, has made mistakes in their testimony or their reporting that were accidental based on what they reported, right? So there's a lot of things.
I've got enough speed tickets because the officer made mistakes on, putting properly what just happened, right?
Yeah,
so
and
it happens.
It happens. It's human nature. Yeah. It happens. Those were accidental. I was accused of deliberately lying about those things. And I just figured that, they want to drum up something against me at this point. And so I go to court, and I figure you have to see that I had no reason to lie deliberately about anything. I'm back to work. I was cleared of any wrongdoing at the airport. Let's get through this case. Find me not guilty, back to work. That's not what happened. Unfortunately.
By the way, before the verdict came down, are you thinking in your mind, this is just a technical thing? Like, there's no way, this is going to go down the direction it's going to go.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was thinking, that there's no way that a judge is going to find me guilty of perjury. That's what's interesting, though, is that my lawyer actually told me at the beginning of my trial. By the way, your lawyer,
is this issued by the police service, like your union?
No, it wasn't issued by the police service. They gave me options of lawyers I could choose from.
Yes.
And I chose one. I mean, I was a young kid at the time. I say young kid because I was, I was naive about a lot of things. And I just kind of looked at the list they gave me and I said, okay, this lawyer's in Vancouver. I want to choose this lawyer.
Okay.
And at the beginning of my case, the lawyer said, hey, listen, I have a feeling this judge wants to find you guilty. And even when he told me that, I thought, but he will look at the facts and he will not find me guilty because officers make mistakes all the time. There was even an officer that testified in my case that he forgot major details of many cases, and he's a 25-year veteran, and it happens. We had, psychologists that we talked to that said, hey, listen, people forget things. And it happens. But nevertheless, he found me guilty anyway and sentenced me to 2.5 years in prison.
Now, there was 4 officers involved.
Yeah.
Did all 4 get the same sentence?
Yeah, and I get that question a lot. No, there was 4 officers. We all went to the same trial, and we all testified in the inquiry. There were 4 of us charged with perjury, 2 that were convicted, 2 that were acquitted. The 2 that were convicted were men of color, and the 2 that were acquitted were white.
And the ones that were acquitted are still working to this day.
Yeah, they're still with the force, yes.
What was going through your mind when you heard this?
You know, one of the officers that was acquitted is a good friend of mine, and he was acquitted before I was convicted. And I've gone through a lot of mixed emotions about it, and because him and I are really, really good friends, and there have been times when I've been jealous. You know, I've been like, man, why did he get off? And I had to go through all this. And there's still times when I wish I didn't go through all this, but it was his dream as a kid to be a police officer. So I almost think, okay, he deserves to be able to still live out his dream. And I'm so glad that he's able to still do that. For me, my dream was never to become a police officer. God just has a different dream for me, and whatever that is, I'm going to follow that path. And I've gotten to the point now where that's where I'm at. This is where I'm supposed to be. And so I've been able to say, you know what, I've let go of what I thought I was supposed to have in order to be whoever I'm supposed to be, which I'm still figuring it out, but you know, it's all good.
So 4 police officers, 4 charged with perjury, 2 completely cut off, meaning as in they're found innocent or acquitted.
Yeah.
2 found guilty. When you're hearing this verdict in the courtroom, what's going through your mind?
Yeah, I think that same kind of feeling of shock and is this a dream, like when I was at the airport, it's a similar feeling to that. I can't believe this is happening, but everything about my sense of the judge and the way he was reacting to the defense and to us, I almost felt like it could happen. But yeah, I think I was just in shock at the time.
Wow. Now, did you think the next thing was going to be now were they going to sentence for this? Like, were you thinking like you just found out, wow, these guys just found me guilty. Your world has been rocked. Are you here? Are you now like thinking in your mind, this means now this is going to happen? Like, are you going there right now?
Yeah, well, of course. I mean, I was immediately let off to a holding cell anyways. So I spent some time behind bars that very day. And then eventually when I started serving my actual sentence, I guess I should back up and say that when I was found guilty, I didn't really think about not going to jail. I don't know. I just figured, okay, you're found guilty of something, you're going to go to jail. I didn't realize that there is, or I didn't remember that you can have a non-custodial sentence, right? So you can have a sentence where you're serving it in the community, which is what my lawyer advocated for. And that's what most people do get. For like perjury is a minor offense, and it was not someone who's a flight risk or a multiple offender. It was the first time I'd ever been charged or convicted of anything. And so a non-custodial sentence would have made perfect sense. Serve it in the community, probation, But he sentenced me to 2.5 years behind bars. And that's just what he chose. And yeah, that was surprising to me that he chose to go with that. Like, he was given the option to decide to sentence me to being behind bars.
Because why do you think that they did not, like, and I don't understand it, why would he just charge 2 and not all 4? If this was...
So why were 2 convicted?
And not the other.
So there was 4 separate judges as well, right? So each judge kind of went on their own facts.
Wow.
So the judge that the 2 that were acquitted had were different than the judges that myself and the other officer had.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, you wake up that morning, you're going into the courtroom, you're preparing for this, you're nervous. You're not going back home that day.
Yeah. Like the day I was convicted? Or?
Yeah, the day that you were coming in for like a sentence, for example, were you thinking I have to serve back to the community? I think you referenced that you could either have a sentence that would be serving within the community.
Yeah.
But when you're coming into that, you're not thinking that I'm not going back home.
Well, there's even the you can appeal your sentence.
Yes.
So it wasn't like I started the sentence right away that day. So I did go back home that day.
Okay.
But eventually I would lose my appeal, and that's when I was given notice that I have to then report in to start my sentence. So I actually drove myself to the prison in Ontario.
Yes.
To start my sentence.
Wow.
Yeah.
And this happened in what prison?
So I started in a provincial prison, and because it's 2.5 years, anything over 2 years and a day is a federal sentence.
Yes.
So you serve it federally. But I started provincially in Maplehurst in Milton.
Yeah.
And then I was transferred to a federal penitentiary in just outside Kingston. It's called Joyceville.
Okay. So, Kwesi, most people will not experience what you went through. And I'm talking about like from the first component, but even going to jail. Most people will not experience that.
Yeah.
What is going through your mind right now as you're driving up to the jail right now? Like, what's going through your mind? Is your mind like thinking like, is this real? What is it going to be like? What am I going to experience? Like, what's going through your mind?
All of that, there's a lot of things going through your mind because it happened so quick, right? So I lost my appeal, and the next day I had to go to prison.
Right.
So that day I was actually literally closing bank accounts and canceling appointments and all these different things that you do, like almost like you're gonna die, right? Your life is ending. I was married, so I give my wife my phone, and I'm like, here's how you deal with all these different things. Here are the passwords and all that stuff. And so that was what I was dealing with the day before going into jail. And then I woke up the morning, and I just started to cry, and I just sitting there with my wife, and it's funny, we went to Tim Hortons anyways, and we drove over to the prison, and my whole thing was, all I wanted to make sure of is that nobody knew that I was a cop.
Right.
Yeah. And that was my biggest fear. I don't know why that was stuck in my head the whole time. Well, I do know why, but that was pretty much the only thing. Not like, how long am I going to be here? Am I going to get out early for good behavior or whatever? I wasn't thinking about any of that. I was just thinking of, please, like, put me somewhere where I'm safe and people don't know I'm a cop.
Because of obviously what happens in jails and prisons when they find out that it's a police officer.
What I've heard anyways. Like,
Yes.
I don't know the truth of it. I'm not sure. But
Yes.
at the end of the day, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
And so I actually spent my first month in solitary.
Wow. Did you request that?
No, I didn't. But the warden came up to me as soon as I walked through the doors, and he said, we're not going to place you with everybody else. We know your story. We're going to put you away from everyone. And when I was transferred to Joyceville, same thing happened. For the first month inside, I was in a solitary cell because they were trying to figure out, okay, where can we put this guy that his identity will be an anonymous. And what they found was that if they put me with sex offenders,
Yeah.
no one's going to ask any questions because sex offenders are the same type of thing, right? They don't want anyone to know that they're in for sex offenses because they get targeted when they.
Right.
So I was actually housed with some other inmates that didn't want anyone knowing what they were in for either. So as I moved around, nobody asked, nobody told. So I ended up keeping my anonymity. So that was about a month after I was in solitary. They placed me with these ex offenders because it was the anonymous level there that I could maintain.
What's solitary confinement like? Because from what we see in the movies, you're just in a small room with nobody around you and not even natural light coming in.
Small room, no one around you. In Maplehurst, there was no light. It was in concrete walls. When I was transferred to Joyceville, I got a window. And I will tell you, when you go from no windows to one window, it's like almost like a measure of freedom for a minute. It's so different. You wouldn't think just adding a window to a cell would make a difference, but it makes all the difference in the world. Like, I could see the real world happening. I could look off in the distance and I could see the highway, people driving by. I could see, it was November when I was there, so I could see as December came, snow falling, I could see different things. And just having a window was life-changing, as funny as it sounds. And just little things, like I was in a concrete bed in Maplehurst, and the bed was like a metal bed, but it gave a little bit in Joyceville. And even that difference, like I couldn't sleep on the concrete because it was a slab that never gave, but metal gives. So just little things like that made the solitary cell in Joyceville like 10 times better than the solitary cell in Maplehurst.
And how long were you in solitary confinement without the window?
Without the window was the first week, and then I was transferred over to Joyceville for the rest of the first month there.
I can't imagine what you're thinking, because to me, like, does time stop? Because, you know, we're in a world right now where we have thousands of distractions, cell phones, TVs, conversations, the radio. When you're in a cell, it's just you and your thoughts.
Yeah, yeah. And that's hard at first, like just being silent, just being alone. Yeah, there was times when it was too quiet, and you get to know yourself a little bit, right? Get to know if you're okay being alone. And I think that's almost a benefit. I'm actually good at being alone, and I think a lot of people aren't. And so that really taught me that I was saying, okay, you can be alone and you can still survive, right?
Did you find that you did things to occupy your time while you're away in your mind and protecting your mind? You know, because, you know, we go through things every day in life that challenge our mindset, where, you know, things like anxiety, depression, and all these things come into play. You know, for yourself, what are you doing? Because I'm only sure there's a lot of reflection happening in there. And because there is no clock, I'm assuming, in there.
Yeah.
You're just basically, I'm assuming, using the window now just to tell you that time's moving by.
Window and the lights. So the lights would go on and off at a certain time. And so I found out what time it was, and I think the light would go on at 6, and then the light would go off at like 9. And so that's when I knew it was 6 and 9 p.m. And meals were, I think, 7, 11, and 2:30. 2:30 is an early dinner. I don't know why they did that, but
That's very early.
I knew the timing. So I'd be like really hungry at about 8 o'clock at night, but whatever. But yes, that's how I knew the time. So I knew 6, 7, 11, and 2:30. That's how I knew time. And then the lights would go off about 8 o'clock. But it didn't matter if it was, you know, because I was there for the whole time. But a lot of journaling, reading, praying, meditating, all these things was how I passed the time.
Do you feel that you got a stronger connection to God being inside there to help you get through this?
Yeah, 100%. And I think there's an old book called Moby Dick, and the author, Herman Melville, once said that God's only voice is silence. He said, God's only voice is silence. And I learned that to be absolutely true, because there's so much noise, as you say, going on in the world. And I believe the only time we really kind of hear that inner voice, or God, whatever you want to believe, is when we get silent. And when it's forced upon you, you realize the importance of trying to force it on yourself when you get out into the world. And it's almost like the world got too noisy. When I was finally out, the world's like so noisy. There's so much going on. It's almost a stress to that you have to remember to come back to that silence, at least some parts of the day.
And how long did you serve right now total?
So in Canada, you have to serve 1/3 of your sentence. So I was sentenced to 2.5 years, which is 30 months. I served 10 months.
10 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
As you're getting closer now to find out you're going to be out on that 10th month, what month is that? Do you remember that you get released?
Yeah. So I served part of it in, like, so the last couple months I was in a halfway house. So, yeah, when I was finally done and I didn't have to report to anybody, you know, it was an interesting feeling, because you're like, I'm free, but what am I going to do with my life now?
I have to ask this, you know, are you still married?
Yeah, I'm still married.
Is your wife connecting with you while you're in there, while you're in jail?
Yeah. So when I was in, for that first week, there's no visitors, but when I got transferred over to Kingston, she could fill out a form, and
come and see you.
After about maybe a month and a half, 2 months, the paperwork came through, and then I had some really, really good friends, a handful of good friends that would take rotations.
That's amazing.
And come and see me. So every month I had a visitor, 2 or 3 weeks for sure.
Okay.
So, and they come on Saturdays or Sundays.
Okay, so you're having a little bit of that social interaction to
Yeah, they come and they meet you in this big room where everybody has their visitors.
Yeah.
Similar to what people see in movies is what happens. And they can stay for, I think, 4 hours it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you get released now, prior to you getting released, are you thinking in your mind now, what's next? Where do I go from here right now?
Yeah, 100%. I was thinking, what do I want to do with my life now? And
knowing that
Yeah.
the odds are stacked against you right now in the sense of like, meaning as in you have this thing on your record right now.
yeah. That was hard because I applied for jobs and I got ghosted everywhere. I don't think I got a single call back because you got to now check that, do you have a criminal record box?
Yeah.
And so that was really hard. My saving grace is that while I was waiting for my trial, I had tried to pick up other like things to make myself feel better about myself. So I competed in a fitness competition, and then I joined an organization called Toastmasters to learn how to become a better public speaker.
Yes.
And then pairing that with the fact that when I was on the force, one of the things I loved doing was I loved going to schools and working with young people. That school resource officer work that everybody hates to do as an officer.
Yes,
I
yes.
loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it. And so young people and speaking, it kind of got me thinking, and I started watching some YouTube videos. And fortunately, was able to kind of parlay that into starting my own business because I think that was my only option. I wasn't getting employed by anybody, so I had to say, okay, what can I do on my own? And I started with doing a bit of personal training, but then I thought, let me see if I can take my story and talk to people, whether it's first responders. Now I talk to first responders, corporate, and young people about resilience and mental health. But it almost forced me into starting my own business because I wasn't getting any callbacks for a job.
When did you get out?
So let me remember this. So 2018, August 2018 was when my 10 months was done.
Okay.
And I was officially off parole in, I think 2020 was
Okay.
when I was done parole.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how has the journey been for you the last 5 years?
Oh, up and down. I don't have any experience in entrepreneurship, so I had to figure out, okay, how do you make this work, and what do you do on a day-to-day basis if you're not working a job? And there's been times when I've been thinking, when I've thought, okay, well, what's next? What do I do now? And every day is kind of unknown, and I still feel that way sometimes now. But I've learned to kind of live with that.
Kwesi, what message do you want the world to hear? What do you want them to know? I mean, you stated that, resilience and mental health. What is one goal that you want to achieve through your message? And what do you want that to be?
I want people to know, I mean, my mother has raised me on her own ever since, I was like 3-4 years old. My dad left, and my mother was never bitter about it. And she's always told me that it's not your reality that matters, it's your response. It's how you respond to things that matter. And I thought it was so important to remember because it's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to it. And you have to go through things in order to know how you respond to things. And so you're not going to learn about being tough or building resilience or being mentally strong in a book. You can read all you want, but it's when you go through things and you pull out the tools that you've read about and you actually use them, that's when you build resilience. Not when you read about it and you hope for the best. No, you have to actually go through things. So when you go through things, it's almost like you should take a little bit of joy in that because it means that now you're going to build that strength, that endurance to go through what you have to grow through.
Do you find that you're still building that strength?
Yeah, I feel like you're never as strong as you want to be. You're always growing, learning. I feel like there's a lot of things that I can handle now that I go through that other people struggle through, and I'm like, nah, that wasn't so hard. Like, the lockdown wasn't hard for me because I spent all that time alone already anyways. That wasn't big. That wasn't, that isolation wasn't something that I dealt with, but it's because I already dealt with something. But yeah, I'm still working on myself every day.
And for yourself, like, again, Kwesi, I have to commend you for what you've gone through and how you're coming out of it. A lot of people would be probably crushed to the point where they don't have the desire, the mindset, the energy, the will to move forward. And, the other individual that was also charged in this and convicted, do you have contact with him still?
We kind of see things a little bit differently. We saw things a little bit differently. I think he was a little bit more bitter about what happened than I was as well, but I think I've been able to let go a little bit easier than he has, and we've just kind of drifted apart over the years. So no, I don't have any contact with him. I have more contact with one of the guys that was acquitted than I do with the other guy that was convicted. It's just nature of lifestyle and where we live as well. He lives in BC. I live here in Ontario. So yeah.
To me, man, like, again, your story is I can't wrap my head around it, man. I can't wrap my head around it. What you've gone through, and that to me is like, I guess maybe a true form of resilience. Do you feel that everything that happened was, when I say meant to be meaning as in that, do you feel that you're put on this earth right now with this story to basically help be a beacon or pave the way for others that may go through something like this, that will need to hear something like this as a crutch?
It could be. It could be. I used to say that I wanted to lean on that, right? Like, this would happen, and it's happened because I'm meant to go out there and be a lighthouse for other people. But at the end of the day, if I do serve as that, that's okay, and I'm grateful for that. But I'm not putting the pressure on myself to say this is what I'm meant to do. Maybe there's something else that I'm meant to do. Maybe this is something that I'm meant to do more of. And if my heart feels led that way, that's why I want to do shows like yours, just so I can share. And if someone gets something from it, then I'm cool with it. I don't like the idea of everything happens for a reason. I like the idea of take something from everything that happens from you to you, right? There's a difference, right? Everything happens for a reason. It means that you're just taking things and you're just saying, oh yeah, this must happen for a reason. No, that's just being passive about it. Being active about it is saying, this is what happened. This is how I'm going to use it to try to take something from it and use it in my life. Not just wait for it to happen, but to go say, what can I take from it? There's a big difference. And when you use the second version and go about your life that way, it's so much more empowering.
Kwesi, do you, you've also transferred a lot of what you're talking to in the form of a book.
Yeah.
Right? Has that been released yet?
My book is called Rise, my first book, and that I go through my stories, and I call it the 8 Keys to, being resilient and living a life you love, and just things that I've learned along the way, and I want to share with other people.
Do you want to talk a little bit about that, about maybe sharing some keys to resilience?
Yeah. Oh, there's so many things that are in the book, but one of the things I talk about is there's a lot of times where you think, why did this happen to me? And if you look back though, you can kind of link things that you may have done to what has happened. And a big thing that I'm big on is being accountable for everything that happens to you in your life. Even if it's someone else's fault, being accountable. Because if you take accountability for everything in your life, even if it's not your fault, if it's 99% someone else's fault and 1% yours, and you take accountability for it, it's so much more empowering for you to do that. And it builds your self-confidence and belief in yourself. And so a lot of times people will tell me, I can't believe this happened to you. I can't believe you went to jail and you didn't lie and you did what you were trained to do. Well, at the end of the day, on May 16th, 2005, I signed the dotted line to become a police officer. I chose to enter this profession. So it's on me that all this happened because I signed the dotted line that marched me along a path where a lot of uncontrollable things happened. And so I'm in control, and I try to keep that mindset with everything I do. And I encourage a lot of people to do that. Take accountability.
No, that's good, man. Where do you want to see everything that you're doing in the next 5-10 years? If you could look at the future.
Yeah, I want to speak to as many people as I can that are struggling. And my goal is, I hear a lot of people that when they go through mental health issues, they go down the wrong path, they commit suicide. I want to end that. And if I can talk to a person here or there that decides they're not going to take their own life because of something I said or something they decide to do differently because of our paths crossing, then that's what I want to wake up every day doing. And if that's in speaking, if that's through coaching, if that's through whatever, then I want to do that.
How do people find you, man? How do people find you? I mean, I found you by accident.
Yeah,
right?
no, you found me on TikTok.
Yeah.
On social media, Kwesi Speaks, Kwesi Speaks. That's where you can find me. Or KwesiMillington.com is on my website, and you can connect with me there for speaking, and you can find my books and everything on there as well.
Okay, I'm going to ask you, Kwesi, one last thing right now. For the person that has gone through a similar experience or is currently in this experience right now or is dealing with something on a similar level and they're hearing this, what advice would you give them?
Just win today. There was times when I was in that cell 23 and a half hours a day in a 7 by 11 foot cell, and I was thinking, how did my life get here? And what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And that caused me so much stress, looking backwards and looking forwards. But when you just focus on the one question, what's my right move right now? What can I do today? Everything changes. So when I just took one day at a time in that cell, everything changed, and I was able to say, you know what? I can win today. So that's what I would say. Just win today.
Man, Kwesi, I really want to thank you, man, for sharing your story. It's a story that I'm like even in shock as I hear right now, because I'm trying to put myself in your shoes and ask myself the question, how would I navigate around this? You seem to me as an individual that's very genuine, but also looking to take something that happened bad in your life and make it into such a positive. And I do think you have a very inspirational message that many people will go and listen to and help. So thank you for what you're doing, man. And one more shout out to your site. It's KwesiMillington.com.
Yeah, KwesiMillington.com or Kwesi Speaks on all social media.
Crazy. By the way, the origin of your name, is it from Ghana?
Yeah, it's Ghanaian. And
Okay.
it means born on a Sunday. I was actually born on a Wednesday, but my mom didn't. My mom didn't like the Wednesday name. I think it's Kwaku, and so she wanted Kwesi, so that's why she named me Kwesi.
Okay, amazing, man. I want to thank you for sharing your story again. For anyone listening here, for everyone who's going through a similar struggle, please, we're going to have some links here. Go deeper, and they can just reach out to you directly.
Yeah, 100%, and especially for fellow officers or first responders, if you're dealing with something and you just want to talk, send me an email. I love to chat.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being part of the show, man.
Thank you.
Have a great one, everyone. Take care. Thank you for joining me in today's podcast. This podcast was created for protectors in the fields of law enforcement, executive protection, security, and anyone looking to level up their mindset. If you are learning from this podcast and you're enjoying it, please subscribe to our YouTube channel at the Sentinel Mindset. That's a zero-cost way to support us. In addition, please subscribe to the podcast both on Spotify and Apple. And on both Spotify and Apple, you can leave us up to a 5-star review. If you have questions for me or comments about the podcast or guests you would like me to consider on the Sentinel Mindset, please post all comments on YouTube. I do read all the comments. Please also check out our sponsors, thearenatoronto.com. The Arena was created to help all those in the fields of law enforcement, security, and all that achieve their fitness goals. I want to thank our producer, Matthew Doyle, and creative support, Jaslyn Singh, who help me with this podcast every week. We value your feedback and are here to support you. Tune into the Sentinel Mindset every week, where we look in the mirror to make real changes and explore what it takes to achieve greatness in your craft.
This podcast is brought to you by Executive Protection Lifestyle Canada. Make sure to drop by next week and don't forget to subscribe.